Well, let's talk about Manchester United against Everton, because at the very beginning of this game, Jimmy Conrad, Manchester United were doing well. Everton suddenly sticking around, and Andrews Townsend with the absolute trolling. Great counter, by the way, but it ends Manchester United 1, Everton 1. Let me ask you this. We'll talk about the game. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I mean, we're talking about coaches that really should be fired here. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I mean, with all due respect, this is not good enough. I was listening to Gabby Agbonlahor on Talk Sports saying, what are you doing sitting Cristiano Ronaldo at home this early in the season? Thoughts on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Jimmy?
For me, it's less about Cristiano Ronaldo that drives me crazy. It's more about that he's continuing to play Fred and McTominay in the double pivot. Like, you know how far you're going to get with those two players in that particular area of the field. You're going to probably lose in a couple semifinals and some cup competitions. You might get to a final or whatever, and you're not going to crack on to actually go on to win the league and be a legit title contender.
Yeah.
You've gotten as far as you're going to get with those two guys. Something has to change. Now, obviously, he's seen something that he feels a little bit vulnerable when those guys don't play, or together at least. I just don't understand when you knew Everton and under Rafa Benitez were going to come out and counter. That's how they scored. That's how Newcastle got their one goal at Old Trafford as well. They sit back, they absorb. And you go up 1-0 on a good goal by Anthony Martial, good switch to the point of attack, good play to get it from one side to the other, of course, and a good finish. But then you have Fred, who has an opportunity to kill the play, and he doesn't. Like, that's the only reason you have the guy in there, is to break up plays and stop counters. And he doesn't, and Everton scores. So that frustrates me. But they don't have Calvert-Lewin, and they don't have Richarlison. They're missing two of their best attacking players. And I just don't understand. You have to win that game. So, yes, that was a must-win game. And for me, it was less about Ronaldo. It was more about some of the choices you made in the middle of the field. And I think that let them down ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, this was an exciting one for me only because it was a chance to see the team without Ronaldo. And again, I'm not bothered about Ronaldo. In fact, I think the home games, and I agree with Jimmy, the home games, you're playing with a double pivot, which feels like you're playing not to lose again. You're playing conservatively. You're not playing with, maybe there's comfort there, but can you take a risk? Can you try some of the other players? We're still seeing Jadon Sancho, no matter how the rotation goes, coming off the bench. I don't know what the deal with him is, because I don't know if anybody watched the Bundesliga last year or the last couple seasons, but he was unbelievable. Now, how that converts into the Premier League, something different. How that converts into a team like Manchester United, also something different. But certainly seems like a little bit of a concern. But you had Martial on, you had Edinson Cavani, and I thought it was, okay, here we go. A different look. How dynamic can this team be? And it just feels like they're still missing pieces. And I feel like when you look at the depth of the squad, they have all the pieces. But for some reason, when they tinker or they change the lineup or they play without Ronaldo, you go, okay, these guys will have more freedom. It won't be like first time I get the ball, I look for Ronaldo and then figure out what I'm going to do next. But it's still lacking some of that creativity. Obviously, Bruno Fernandes feels a bigger role. Ronaldo's off the field and he can take his half chances and hit bangers. But overall, I look at this as like almost like there's a tension between the manager and the players in terms of freedom or confidence or belief in the system that it feels like there's something bubbling there of like, are we all heading in the right direction?
Yeah, my producer.
Go ahead, go ahead.
I wanted to segue to your question, Jimmy. I wanted to a question to you, to both of you. But my producer Des Norris wants to ask about Sancho and how frustrated it must be at the arrival of Ronaldo. But to be honest with you, that's also equally asked of Van de Beek. This is a player that comes to Manchester United with a tremendous amount of respect, really good technically, and he is a shadow of himself. And it's not his fault, I think, most of it. I don't know what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer does to not get the best out of players. So I guess the question returns. In terms of Van de Beek, these sort of bench players, they're anywhere else I could see them flourish. How frustrated must Sancho and others be with the arrival of yet another attacking player like Ronaldo? But it's not just Ronaldo as a scapegoat. It's just in general, just what I'm looking at and how Solskjaer is going to get the best out of them.
What Van de Beek's fault was, and I'll start with him, is that he signed with Manchester United in the first place.
Yes, that's the only fault he had. Yes.
Honestly, I will say that when I first heard that he signed with Manchester United, I was like, why? Where's he going to fit? Yeah. And you knew right away, like, where's he going to fit? You got Pogba, you got Bruno Fernandes already, and they were already committed to having a double pivot. And can Van de Beek play one of those? He can, but can he do some of that thankless hard running in the Premier League. There's always that tag. Well, is he good enough to play in the Premier League? Dude, yeah, he's good enough to play in the Premier League, you bastards. So that always like, yes, he can do it. You got to give him a run of games, though. Like, he never gets a run of games. How can the guy ever establish a flow or a rhythm? And the same thing applies to Jadon Sancho. You want him to get used to playing in the Premier League? Dude, give that guy like 5-6 games in a row, and I'm sure he'll get caught up to speed very, very quickly. But if you stop and start his time, and then he's getting minutes here and there and all that good stuff, it's going to be hard for him to ever feel comfortable. And maybe that's how Ole Gunnar likes to manage. There are managers out there like that, but it's not necessarily going to work for these two players in particular. I do want to say, though, to Heath's point really quick, is that it was 1-0 at halftime for Manchester United, scoring the 43rd minute. At the 57th minute, they brought on the players that everybody was clamoring for at the start. Cristiano Ronaldo's in for Cavani, and Jadon Sancho comes in for Anthony Martial. 8 minutes later, they give up the goal on a counter to Andros Townsend. So I just almost, and I don't do this often, but almost to be an apologist for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, in some ways, he did everything everybody asked of him, and it still didn't work. He was kind of in a no-win situation. Before
he jumped, let me just interrupt. I watched this whole game, and I'm going to tell you something. And I did a little analogy on Twitter. I said that, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is what Michael Bay was to Pearl Harbor, to this squad. He relies so much on stars to solve a terrible production. It doesn't. I was watching the whole lead at halftime, and Bruno Fernandes was having a fantastic game. But if he doesn't click, everybody's lost. Meaning that, to me, Solskjaer is the kind of manager that relies so much on individual talent that it doesn't matter. You could have 3 Ronaldos out there. There is no shape sometimes. He's a very nice man. I'm a very big fan of his playing career. I'm sure he's a great man manager. Players like him. But to me, tactically, he's not it. And I thought that was a good example of what we saw against Everton. Sorry, Heath.
Yeah, no, I think just to pick up on that point, when you look back at the Liverpool-Man City game, what you saw were teams with individual brilliance, moments of individual brilliance, right? Combination play, individual moments to create goal-scoring opportunities. You saw world-class moments come out of what looked like a very team-oriented shape and approach to the game. And Manchester United doesn't feel like that right now. They don't feel like they have this team where then you put these players and you build the parameters of how this team is going to play. And then within those parameters, you see the creativity and world-class come out of it. You see, again, these, and people called it from the start, from the very first game with Ronaldo, where the energy was so high and you're like, wow, it is going to be very hard if this is what it's going to take for them to win. And it's continuing, and I called a little bit of a bluff on that early on, where I was like, hey, that energy is infectious and energy, blah, blah, blah. But you're actually seeing that as the crutch, because it doesn't seem like there is a coherent plan for the players to all buy into that helps them protect the lead, that helps them to win games, to help them have a rhythm and just a style of play. And it feels like a bunch of these pieces. And that goes to Jadon Sancho, where you should know that he's emotional. He played poorly. When his transfer fell through last time, he was pretty poor for a while. And now you've brought him in after this exhausting failed transfer before. You bring him in, and now he's not getting his run. And if you're looking at it, and then you bring in Ronaldo, you're like, man, you guys screwed me. And I put everything into this. I live this in my, and Jimmy, you know what it's like when something like that is happening. You live it a million times in your head, right? It's a dream come true for a player like Sancho to go to a club like Manchester United, in theory. And now you get in there and you go, hey, this isn't what I signed up for. This isn't how it was. You guys brought in all this guy. I'm happy to compete for a spot, but if I got to start 100 yards back in a 200 yards race, I'm never going to be able to win. And that mentality becomes hard to get over when you go in. And then you talk about the Premier League and the pressures of it, the media and all the scrutiny of all these things, of every touch gets overanalyzed. And it's okay. It's a big place to be in Germany, but when you play in England, everybody's talking about you all the time, your life. When you step out of the house, you're being watched and everything like that. It can be a lot. It's already a big enough adjustment, I guess is what I'm saying. And so if you're not getting the backing of the club, or at least the benefit of the doubt to get some run of games or some run of form to prove that you're more than just a bit part player that plays the last 20 minutes to bring a spark, I think it's going to be hard to see the best of Sancho as long as he has this sort of backing from the club at the moment.
Yeah. I just want to add, there was a play there at the end against Everton where Jadon Sancho lost the ball in midfield. And that led to Everton actually scoring, but they got called offside, thankfully, for Jadon Sancho. So what's hard for him to couple with everything that he just said, when he comes on, he's got to be lights out. Like, he can't.
That's very tough for him to do that.
Clearly it is. I mean, he still can't feel sorry for himself. You have plenty of time to be emotional about that type of stuff after the game. You can talk to whoever your your safety net is of communicators.
But Jimmy, there's a difference between lights out and the feeling like you have to be lights out, right? Going out and playing because you're confident versus feeling like I've got to do more and more and more, which leads to bad turnovers. This leads to bad moments where you dribble when you should pass and all those things where you get stuck in your own head. There's a big difference between being very good and saying I have to be very good every chance or I'm not going to play, and then you end up playing poorly.
I think when we come to an agreement of Manchester United right now is individuals still not fully comprehending exactly what is need to be asked of them. And that falls under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, in my opinion. By the way, Manchester United's next 10 games, Leicester City away, Atalanta at home, Liverpool at home, Tottenham away, Atalanta, Manchester City, Watford, Villarreal, Chelsea, Arsenal. It's not going to be easy, so we'll see how they do.